What a farce. Today and yesterday have been just another day of Tory chaos and carnage. A Prime Minister with no grip, while the British taxpayer is continually forced to pay the price.
It wouldn't be right to have a vote on the Rwanda bill without hearing from Yvette Cooper. Here she is summing up the sham of this project.
Former Tory cabinet ministers, deputy chairs from all sides queuing up to tell us it's a bad bill, it won't work, it won't protect our borders, it won't comply with international law, it's fatally flawed. The only thing the Tories all seem to agree on is that the scheme is failing, the law won't solve it, and the Prime Minister is failing too, and they know it. A failing Rwanda scheme that's costing Britain £400 million, that's sent more Home Secretaries than asylum seekers to Kigali, and that will only apply to less than 1% of those arriving in the UK. Less than 1%. The third Tory law on channel crossings in 2 years, it will get through tonight, just like the previous two did, even though they failed, just like the last two, a total con on the British people. And this chaos leaves the Prime Minister's authority in tatters. He's in office but not in power. No one agrees with him on his policy, and the real weakness is that he doesn't even agree with it himself. A Prime Minister who is so weak he's lost control of the asylum system, lost control of our borders, and lost any control of the Tory party. 60 Tory MPs voting against the government, 2 deputy chairs sacked, a Home Secretary and Immigration Secretary formally lost, Cabinet Ministers briefing openly they don't support the bill. The Home Secretary himself thinks it's batshit. The Prime Minister tried to cancel it, and yet, so weak, they're still going ahead. And under the Tories, we've seen border security weakened while criminal gangs take hold because they've not taken the action that we need. The backlog soar, the budget bust. Criminal smuggler convictions have dropped by 30%. Returns have halved. And instead of the practical plans that Labour set out to set up the new Returns and Enforcement Unit to stop the Home Office just losing thousands of people that it cannot keep track of, to stop the halving of the Returns Unit, to set up the new security powers to go after the criminal gangs, to stop this 30% drop in criminal gang smuggler convictions, and to have the additional cross-border police unit that we could be investing in if we weren't spending so much money on this failing Rwanda scheme. Because it's £400 million of taxpayers' money going to Rwanda, all without a single person being sent, all in addition to their whopping multi-billion-pound hotel bill. And of course, if they get flights off, it's probably another 10 to 20 million for every 100 people they actually manage to send. And President Kagame, an astonishing intervention this afternoon, saying he's happy for it to be scrapped and maybe offering to refund the money. Think what we could do with £400 million, Mr. Speaker. It's more than a third of the budget of the National Crime Agency. But the Kigali government have clarified the position this afternoon, and it's even worse. They've said, under the terms of the agreement, Rwanda has no obligation to return any of the funds paid. If no migrants come and the UK government wishes to request a refund of the portion of funding allocated to support, we will consider this request. Unbelievable. The government signed a deal, signed a whole series of cheques to send hundreds of millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money to Rwanda for a scheme they were warned would not work, that they were warned might be unlawful, they were warned would not work as a deterrent, and they were warned would be unenforceable and at high risk of fraud. Yet they signed it because they don't give a damn about taxpayers' money. And now they want to pass this bill and spend even more taxpayers' money on this failing scheme, a scheme which is only likely to cover less than 1% of the people who arrived in the country last year. Over 90,000 people who applied for asylum. And the Court of Appeal said Rwanda only had capacity for 100 people. The Immigration Minister admitted it's just a few hundred and not any time soon. And if they ever finally implement the Illegal Migration Act, that will immediately create a list of 35,000 people the Home Secretary is supposed to immediately send to Rwanda. And at this rate, it will take the government 100 years to implement their own failing policy. Although, to be honest, it is probably even worse than that, because they can't even find most of the 5,000 people that they put on the initial Rwanda list. Totally unbelievable. The Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, in the space of about 18 months, have literally lost 4,200 people they planned to send to Rwanda. I bet the Prime Minister wishes he could lose a few of those Home Secretaries he managed to send. And he did indeed lose his Immigration Minister. It's part of the chaos of the last few weeks and months. I give way to the former Immigration
for giving way. If she doesn't like the Rwanda policy so much, why did she brief the Times over the Christmas holidays that she was in favour of an offshore processing scheme, a scheme that everyone knows is more expensive than a scheme like Rwanda and has a far less deterrent effect? So it seems to be that everything that she doesn't like is her plan, except she didn't have the guts to put her name to it, so she briefed the Times anonymously.
Yeah. Nice try with total nonsense from the former Immigration Minister, who does have a history of making things up. Let's just be clear. It's not clear that there's anything on the planet that is more expensive per person than the government's Rwanda scheme, £400 million, in order to send nobody to Rwanda and to totally fail. But look, the former Immigration Minister, I give him credit, he has exposed the real frontbench plan, the real government's plan, the real Prime Minister's plan. It is just to try, in the former Immigration Minister's words, to try and get a few symbolic flights off before a general election with a small number of people on them, not to worry about handing over a small fortune to another country, not to worry about the fact that all this focus on one small failing scheme means they're failing to go after the gangs, and they've lost thousands of people the Home Office should be tracking, not to worry about the fact that this new law is so badly drawn up that, frankly, they may be ordered by the courts to bring people back at further huge cost to the British taxpayer, turning the whole thing into an even bigger farce. That is not a workable policy. It is a massive, costly con. They're trying to con voters, trying to con their own party, but actually the fact is everybody can see through it now. He's a £400 million Rwanda scheme for a few hundred people is like the Emperor's new clothes. And the Prime Minister and his Immigration Ministers have been desperately spinning the invisible thread, but we can all see through it. The Home Secretary is just wandering naked round this chamber, waving a little treaty as a fig leaf to hide his modesty behind. I admit he doesn't have much modesty to hide. Mr. Speaker, there are things the Home Secretary and I agree on. We agree on working with France. We agree on the deal with Albania. We agree on the importance of stopping dangerous boat crossings that are undermining border security and putting lives at risk. And I think he probably agrees with us about the failings of the policy he is trying to defend today. We need stronger border security and a properly controlled and managed asylum system. So the UK does its bit to help those fleeing persecution and conflict, and those who have no right to be here are returned. We need Labour's plan for the new security powers, the new cross-border police, the new security agreement, the new returns and enforcement unit, the clearing of the backlog, the ending of hotel use, keeping track of the thousands of people that the Home Secretary has lost. But they'll get their law through tonight. This third new law in 2 years, the third Home Secretary to visit Rwanda with his chequebook, the third bilateral agreement with Rwanda. The Tory backbenchers have been saying it should be 3 strikes and you're out. Yeah. Well, we're now on 3, 6, 9 strikes and they haven't even got to first base. Because every time they bring forward a new law, it makes things worse. The first new law failed because the main provision's now suspended. The second new law failed, the main provision's not even implemented. Forgive us for not believing a word the government says and for voting against a third failing bill today. The only difference now is that none of their backbenchers believe them either. Broken promises on clearing the backlog, on ending hotel use, on stopping the boats, on returning people who come. It's chaos and failing on smuggler gangs, failing on returns and failing to get a grip. Britain deserves better than this Tory asylum chaos.
Click here for Jacob Rees-Mogg contradicting himself yet again.